Hi and welcome back to another video of JPlay. I am Marcus and today I'm not going to start a playthrough or a walkthrough series today. I'm doing something a little bit different. I'm not going to talk about my top 10 games, the top most thematic games or whatnot today. It's all about dreaming and thinking about potential board games adaptations, potential expansions I'm desperately waiting for quite some time, and maybe also give you some room to whatever, send in your opinions, your wishes, your dreams of upcoming board games or expansions for existing board games. So yeah, let's get started. And my very first thing, the really top most priority thing on my list, is a game about the Sopranos. Yes, I totally love and dig the TV shows. I believe I have watched the whole series at least 3 times already. I'm in my 4th right now and I still cannot get enough. Of course, I am aware there are a lot of, let's say, mobster, mafia themed games out there, but I really like the IP. I really want to play with Tony Soprano, going places like Satrialis, for example. And I also like the vibes of not being in a major city, but it's all around New Jersey. And with all the, let's say, special occasions it comes from. I think most of the mafia themed games today are basically in New York, Manhattan, and really moving this now to New Jersey is definitely already on its own a cool little twist. Not real 100% sure what mechanics I would like to see, if it's really something like The Godfather or if it's something of the other, whatever, 10,000 kind of mafia games out there. That's really left out for your imagination, but I really would like to see a board game. As far as I know, there are at least 1 or 2 quiz games out there, but yeah, to be honest, who cares about those? So here's my top 1 on my list, of really the game I'm really would desperately waiting for and really pay dear bucks for that. So if any of you publishers or designers out there are considering to do something with that and can afford the IP, then definitely go out and design a game for the Sopranos. The second entry on my list is an expansion. There is an entry on The Geek which says The Luck of the Irish, I believe. Pretty much the first, let's call it, big box expansion for Sons of Anarchy, Man of Mayhem. There were some smaller boxes pretty much adding more MCs to the game. Nice, but definitely nothing game breaking here. I think they added more they added more players, which is definitely a nice thing, and I do think it's definitely shines. The more the merrier. The 4-player game is, I would think, the minimum here. I really don't know what they would have introduced with The Luck of the Irish, and quite honestly, even if they are not going to release, and I'm pretty sure they are not, they lost the IP and I'm pretty certain they're not going to repay for the license again. Still, I would be really intrigued to understand what they would have introduced with this expansion. Let's say, this season of the show, I think it was the 3rd or 4th season, cannot quite remember right now, wasn't for everyone, and I also have to admit it was not my favorite season. There were some nice twists. I really liked the Irish version or variant of the title theme, really nicely done actually, but ultimately it felt a little bit too lengthy for me and was a lot going on back and forth. I really didn't enjoy it that much. Of course, I watched it at least twice, but still, I could imagine introducing some of the Irish locations into these coasters, which are nicely done in this game. Definitely some more of those Anarchy cards. Maybe even adding the Irish charter of the Sons of Anarchy Motorcycle Club, Redwood Original, which is what Stamcrow stands for. But we have enough of those motorcycle clubs, but still, adding this into the mix would definitely make perfect sense, and it would be a proper MC rather than having the Niners, which are not really an MC, but still they're coming on motorbikes, minis in this game. But that's basically me complaining here. But again, I would love to see or hear whatever the designers or publishers or producers to say what did they have in mind when they were going to release this Luck of the Irish. So definitely very high on my, let's call it, wish list to see. Most likely not going to happen. Up next on my list is a proper adaptation of the original Pirates game by Sid Meier. So this one here. I think it's released in 1987. And yes, I played this game pretty much from the very start on my friend's Commodore 64. I never had a Commodore 64 myself, so I always had to go to my friends, and literally everyone around me had a Commodore 65. I had to go with a Schneider CPC, which was okay. I learned to code relatively early on. But yeah, I never had this Commodore 64, but again, a lot of my friends had one and we spent countless hours playing this game. I do know, of course, and I have those, either Merchant and Marauders and also Shiver Me Timber already do a nice job introducing this whole pirate theme kind of sandbox thing. Especially Shiver Me Timbers does a great job in respect to this whole family reunion thing, going for treasure hunts. But then again, this whole trading aspect is not really fleshed out quite well in this game, for example, which is done much better in Merchants and Marauders, for example. And the same is true for the ship combat, which I definitely like way more in Merchants and Marauders. On the other hand, I do like this fencing thing in Shiver Me Timbers. Yes, I do know there are other pirate-themed games out there, but these two come to my mind when I think about a sandbox kind of game. Yes, there is what is it, Blackbeard by GMT, which I also did a playthrough, a solo playthrough, but this is a little bit too convoluted to me. It feels really more like a war game to me, rather than a sandbox kind of game. So maybe I'm really looking for a blend between Merchants and Marauders and Shiver Me Timbers or so. I don't know what it is, but it does not really satisfy my desire to really re-encounter the original Pirates as a board game. I did play the Sid Meier's Pirates on my iPad a couple of times, or numerous times actually, because it's not that bad. They added some stuff which I'm not particularly fond of, especially the dancing, which is a mini game which I definitely couldn't care less about. On the other hand, this whole attack theme where you are shooting your guns towards the harbor and the dock, that's definitely nicely done. But yeah, we are talking about board games here, and so anyone who's out there who wants to do a Sid Meier's or Pirates with the exclamation point kind of board game out there, and maybe also looking at Port Royal, the computer game. The very first one I really did like a lot. All the others were already too complicated for me. Maybe I'm simply getting old, but they added too much of this whole optimization thing, how you have to build your colonies and how you have to create your trade routes. I don't want to make this an economic game. I still want to be a pirate on my small little fleet and not want to create my own pirate empire here. But yeah, I think you are understanding what I'm trying to say. So again, anyone out there who wants to do a proper pirates game based on Sid Meier's Pirates, then yeah, definitely welcome to do so, and I will definitely join that campaign. And yeah, then there is Ghostbusters, the board game. I want a proper adaptation of the original films. Yes, I do know we have some board games out there. This is, by the way, the Playmobil Marshmallow Man, which I really love, really nicely done. Definitely a great job by Playmobil here. I spent an awful lot of money on the Kickstarter campaign. The components really looked very nice in the end, and I also paid a lot of money for shipping. I believe to Germany it was 35, 40 euros or so easily. Yes, you got a lot of stuff, I get it, not complaining here, but it was a very expensive game, and in the end I got a very bad Zombicide clone, which I also don't really like Zombicide. Yes, I know, you could have seen that, what is coming, but back then I was totally blinded. Hey, there is a Ghostbusters game, and yeah, I also noticed, okay, they're using more this whole comic book look and feel rather than creating artwork based on the original movies, which I would definitely have preferred, but ultimately I wanted this Ghostbusters game. It arrived, I played it really a couple of times, 10 times or so. I really wanted to like and love this game. Unfortunately, I didn't. It really had some very strange balancing issues. Some missions were awfully simple, some you couldn't really lose actually. There were a lot of problems with this game. Not quite sure what they did with the second campaign. Maybe they already fixed some stuff, but I never looked at it then when it came out or when the campaign was launched. So I cannot really speak about that. But this was one of the games I traded away kind of with a broken heart today. I kind of regret it because from what I have seen, someone is working on some, not really house rules, I think a complete new set of rules, and from what I've seen, they look kind of promising. Didn't see the whole thing yet. Maybe they were released now. So this is the thing where I think maybe if you give it another try, with this new set of rules, maybe this game would make perfect sense. So that's why I maybe should have hold on, but ultimately I think I already sold it 3 years ago. But if someone of you wants to get rid of it and will offer it for a decent price, I would be willing to look at it and maybe give it another spin with these new set of rules. And yeah, that's me basically longing for a proper board game about Ghostbusters. For my next item on my list, I basically had to reach behind me, and that's something for Eldritch Horror. You might ask, okay, why do you need additional stuff for Eldritch Horror? I think I really have all the expansions for this game, and I played all the expansions, and I played this game countless times. I think this is by far the most played cooperative game which I played at home with friends and whatnot. I cannot really tell you how much I played it. Definitely 30, 40 times, I don't know. But I'm still enjoying this game. But relatively early on, when I saw this little location on the main map which says Arkham, and then I think I saw the news for the first expansion, the big box expansion, Mountains of Madness. I thought to myself, why don't they introduce a sideboard for Arkham? Of course you could ask, hey, if you want to play something in Arkham, play Arkham Horror. You have 3 editions now and you have the card game. Why don't you need that? But still, I like the sandbox and still somewhat streamlined ways that Eldritch Horror is basically going about the rules. It really plays much quicker and easier than Arkham Horror, the 2nd edition. Yes, the 3rd edition is somewhat streamlined, but still I would love to see a proper sideboard for Arkham. How cool would it be instead to go to the pyramids or to these ice plateaus, to whatever, visit the Miskatonic University, or maybe they added a little location around Dunwich, for example, or so. I'm well aware that this game is pretty much done, so I'm relatively certain we will not see any more expansion, and I'm already, kind of afraid of the day when they're announcing Eldritch Horror, the 2nd edition or so. Let's see about that. But that's basically what I would have liked to see, and early on I was relatively certain they were going to do that, but ultimately they didn't. I mean, I love all these sideboards, even though I'm not playing all the times with those, but I love them all. I love the Pharaoh, I love the Miskatonic University, I'm saying it, Mountains of Madness, and I kind of like the Dreamland, which is definitely different enough because you get there in a different way. So they really put in a lot of thought how they're introducing those sideboards. And unlike, let's say, the Arkham Horror 2nd edition, for example, they also introduced good reasons why you need to go there, for example. That's really a job nicely done. But yeah, basically all I'm trying to say, why don't you give us an Arkham sideboard to enjoy with this game? And then there is Battlestar Galactica. You might ask, okay, you have a hell of a lot of Battlestar Galactica games out there, at least the Traitor game, which I love and enjoy, as some of you may know. There's also a miniature game out there, and they re-released, or Fantasy Flight released, and Fathomable. Of course, it's not Battlestar, but it's basically the same mechanic. No, here what I'm really wondering and thinking about, and it's, I think, not completely unlikely, is that we are seeing a legendary version of Battlestar Galactica. So the deck building game. I'm a huge fan of deck builders, definitely one of my most enjoyable game mechanics of all times. I played most of the legendary versions out there. I own also a lot of those. And in this case, I think we should look at an encounters version of legendary, so similar to Aliens or to Predator. And here we are not speaking about the really awful looking Firefly version of the game. I had it, I played it, I liked the mechanics, but I couldn't look at it. So I really traded this away also relatively early on. But again, here I would really love to see a Battlestar Galactica version of it. And I wouldn't care if they're going with stills or if they're going with artwork, unless they're not doing the same artwork like Firefly, for example. I could imagine they're even adding dogfights to the game as basically mini games or side games or something like that. So I think they did something relatively similar in Firefly, where they also added damage to your ship, for example. So I could imagine something similar to that. I even could imagine having a traitor mechanic in that game, because in, I think, most of the encounter versions out there, there is the opportunity to have pretty much an adversary kind of player. So one player who's playing the other. So here you could do something similar, but maybe with hidden roles, for example, would be extremely cool. So this is something which I could imagine happening. So Upper Deck, if you're watching this, highly unlikely, but yeah, I'm definitely willing to pay big bucks for your Battlestar Galactica legendary version. And don't mind if you're adding encounters to that. You could play through some of the most iconic episodes, or you can play through the series. I think there were four series or seasons in the show. I think I could be okay not focusing too much on the very last season, even though it was okay still. Yes, the resolution in the end was a little bit but up till then it was really a great show, definitely belonging to my top 3 shows of all time. So yeah, here we are, me asking desperately for a legendary version of Battlestar Galactica. Up next, I would like to see a game about Downton Abbey. I do own Obsession and all of its expansions so far. I know it's being referred to as Downton Abbey, the board game. And I would agree, because thematically it really catches that whole spirit of that show about that age and whatnot. But still, I would love to see the original characters. I'm really all about theme, and when I really do like a TV show, which I do from time to time, I would also like to play with those characters in the show. I mean, who doesn't want to play as Mr. Carson, for example, or Mr. Mosley and deal with stuff? I was thinking for quite some time actually what kind of game mechanics I would ask for. So I don't want to be another, because I don't want just a retheme of Obsession, for example. So pretty much kind of worker placement kind of game. I think Dan already did a great job in more or less designing this game. So I was more thinking about something like, let's take King's Dilemma, for example, where you are having this campaign and you are taking over certain roles of these iconic characters and have to make decisions that will then define the outcome of the family, and maybe also having some impact on the actual nobility, for example, out there, or aristocracy. Where, for example, in the movie when pretty much the king visited them, or when they also were pretty much, I think, was it the crown prince or so, they more or less, let's call it rescued from some bad rumors or so in one of the episodes, for example. These could be some of the things I could foresee. And much like the TV show that is marching through the time, you could also do that in this game, where you can really progress in your timeline, really dealing with World War I, for example, and some of its basically problems or effects it had on nobility, on the society as a whole. Maybe also seeing the rise of the bourgeoisie, for example, and pretty much the decline of the nobility that came with it, for example. So I think there's a lot of stuff in there for a game like this. I do know, yes, it's pretty much an awfully expensive IP. There are some puzzles out there, 3D puzzles, for example. I think you can build Downton Abbey, and I think I caught this in one of my walkthroughs of Essen 3-4 years ago, cannot quite remember. But this is really one of the things I could totally imagine to see and to play. So yeah, again, if you are out there, designer, publisher, and you are maybe also thinking about something like this, here's your customer. The last item on my list is Talisman Harry Potter, which I recently covered on my channel, and the game is also relatively fresh. Asking for an expansion for a game that's really early might be a little bit premature, I get that, but here I was really, I think, blown away. I love the original Talisman, and when I say original, I mean the 4th edition, even though I really played all the versions before. Pretty much I got stuck with the 4th edition in the end, but this one here is something which I really totally dig from a theme perspective. I'm a huge Potterhead myself, and I think I even wore my Slytherin t-shirt when I did the introduction of my Talisman playthrough. The reason why I'm asking for an expansion, because typically you would say, oh come on, expansion, Talisman, this will come out. The problem is the track record by the OP releasing expansions for their Talisman spin-offs like Batman, Kingdom Hearts, Star Wars is not very good. So that's why I'm saying not really convinced that we will ever see any expansions for this game. And there is so much opportunity to introduce more character. It was really a sin not getting to play Hermione, Neville, Ron, whatnot, Luna, for example. They're all kind of part of the game. You can encounter them, you can take them with you as followers, but that's not really the same. And the same is true for, let's say, all the other Death Eaters, for example. A lot to explore. They really added some cool miniatures and some cool characters like Draco and Lucius. Not so sure why they went with Wormtail in the end, but I get it for whatever reason. I think they also want to introduce a Might character, for example. They did a very poor job on the rules, which may be because they needed to release this game before Christmas last year. And yeah, this basically meant they had to bypass a couple of rounds going through the editing of the rules and checking if all of the rules are correct. But it's not unplayable, especially if you know the original Talisman, you will be fine. But again, if someone from the OP is watching this, and I really do hope that this game is selling well. I mean, it's Harry Potter. You write Harry Potter on anything and it should sell like crazy, actually. So I can't imagine that this game isn't selling particularly well. Again, unless they really are getting, or some of the buyers are getting frustrated with the rules or so and will basically put it aside. But again, then the game has already been sold. Ultimately, it's still a good game. It's really enjoyable. They introduced some cool stuff like the Blood Moon expansion, the werewolf. Here it's not the werewolf, it's Voldemort, for example. So really, really, really a cool twist to the original Talisman series. And yeah, again, if someone from the OP is listening, please, 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 please give us some expansions for this game. More, maybe sideboards, more encounters, more spells, and especially more characters to play with. And yeah, that's basically the end of my list for today. I do know, I think these were only 9 items. Yeah, I was thinking hard for a 10th item, but then ultimately, as I come before I pull anything out of my fingers here, let you come back to me and let me give you your 10th item on my list where you say, I totally want to see that TV show adaptation, this book adaptation, comic book series, or expansion for existing board games. Definitely let me know. I'm really curious to hear what you what you are thinking about it. I'm pretty sure there are some games out there which you would like to be real and want to play with your friends on an actual table. And yeah, that's basically the end of my list. I really hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think. Hope to see you soon in one of my other videos. Maybe before I get to say goodbye here, huge shout out to all of my patrons as usual. Really do like all your support. Again, if you want to support my channel, you will find a link to my Patreon. You can join my community right here on YouTube. Like and subscribe, leave a comment, everything helps. And yeah, with that being said, hope to see you soon, and until then, bye bye.